In. The melody of laughter wafted through the air, catching Ethan's attention mid-thought. It wasn't the sound itself. It was the way it felt, sharp and out of place. Sitting in the dimly lit kitchen, he glanced up from his laptop, his brow furrowed. Claire, his wife of 7 years, was on the couch. Her face was illuminated by the soft glow of her phone. Her laughter bubbled up again, light and free, as her fingers danced across the screen. It should have been comforting, a moment of joy after weeks of her claiming exhaustion from work. Instead, it gnawed at him. "What's so funny?" Ethan asked casually, rising to grab a bottle of water from the fridge. Claire startled slightly, her head snapping up. For the briefest moment, something flickered in her eyes. Panic? Guilt? She quickly smoothed it over with a smile, but Ethan's chest tightened. "Just a silly meme someone sent from work," she said, locking her phone and placing it face down on the armrest. "You wouldn't get it?" Ethan forced a chuckle and nodded. It wasn't unusual for Claire to laugh at random things. She was the social one between them, always scrolling through endless group chats or sharing ridiculous posts with her friends. But something about tonight felt off. Her laughter was too soft, too private, and her explanation too rehearsed. He let it slide. For now. Later, as they lounged together watching a rerun of their favorite show, her phone buzzed again. Ethan didn't miss how quickly she grabbed it, typing with a speed and intensity he rarely saw from her. The tension in the air thickened. "Who's that?" he asked, keeping his voice light. Claire didn't look up. "Sarah from work," she replied, almost dismissively, before placing the phone back down. Ethan said nothing more, but his thoughts raced. Sarah was a familiar name, a friend Claire often mentioned in passing. Yet, the way she avoided his gaze left an uneasy weight in his chest. That night, as Claire drifted to sleep beside him, Ethan lay awake. He stared at the ceiling, his mind replaying the small, seemingly insignificant moments from the evening. Her laughter, the quickness with which she locked her phone, her vague answers. All of it formed a pattern he couldn't ignore. His gut whispered the one word he didn't want to believe: betrayal. The unease only grew in the days that followed. Claire, once so affectionate and open, seemed distant, her attention constantly pulled toward her phone. Even during dinner, a sacred time they had once shared, her phone was never out of reach. She laughed more often, but not with him. Her excuses for late nights at work became routine. "They're really piling it on at the office," she'd say with a tired smile, brushing past him to grab her bag. Ethan wanted to believe her. He told himself it was just stress or a phase. But the cracks in their life together were widening, and no matter how much he tried to convince himself otherwise, the feeling that something was deeply wrong refused to leave. One evening, Ethan caught her slipping out to the patio for a phone call. From the kitchen window, he watched as she paced back and forth, her voice low and urgent. When she returned, her smile felt forced. "Who was that?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "My manager," she said quickly, brushing past him without meeting his eyes. Ethan's jaw tightened. Every answer felt rehearsed. Every smile felt calculated. Quietly, he resolved to find out the truth. It was a quiet Sunday morning when Ethan's resolve was tested. Claire was upstairs, the sound of running water drifting down the stairs. Her phone, charging on the kitchen counter, buzzed once, then twice. Ethan hesitated, his hand hovering over the device. He wasn't the kind of man to invade someone's privacy. Trust was the foundation of their marriage, or so he'd thought. But trust required transparency, and Claire had become a locked door. His fingers brushed the phone. His heart raced. He knew he might find nothing, a funny meme, a work update. But he also knew there was no turning back if he unlocked it. He took a deep breath and tapped the screen. The password hadn't changed. The Messages app opened instantly, and there it was, a name that wasn't Sarah. Logan. The most recent message from him read, "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." Ethan's stomach plummeted. He scrolled up, his hands trembling. The texts weren't just flirtatious. They were damning. Inside jokes, secret meetups, and photos filled the thread. One photo stopped him cold. Claire and Logan in a hotel room, their faces pressed close, their smiles radiant. The sound of the shower, shutting off, snapped Ethan out of his stupor. He quickly placed the phone back on the counter, his heart pounding. Claire came downstairs minutes later, her hair damp, a towel slung over her shoulder. "Hey, what do you want for breakfast?" she asked casually, oblivious to the storm brewing within him. Ethan forced a smile, his mind screaming with the weight of what he now knew. "Whatever you feel like making," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos inside. That was the moment he decided. Claire wouldn't know he'd discovered her secret. Not yet. He needed time to think, to plan. He wouldn't let her lies destroy him without consequences. Not this time. Ethan couldn't sleep that night. Lying next to Claire, who seemed blissfully unaware of the bombshell he had uncovered, he replayed every detail in his mind. The texts, the photos, the betrayal. It all pointed to one undeniable truth. He turned to look at her, her face peaceful in the dim moonlight. This was the woman he had built his life with, shared dreams with. How long had she been living this double life? How could she act so normal while stabbing him in the back? The next morning, Ethan rose early, unable to sit idle. While Claire slept, he made himself a cup of coffee and opened his laptop. If Logan was bold enough to engage in an affair with a married woman, he was bound to leave breadcrumbs. It didn't take long to find him. Logan Hartley's social media profile was polished, a curated collection of gym selfies, work achievements, and scenic vacation shots. But what caught Ethan's attention wasn't Logan himself. It was the photos of his family. Logan was married to a woman named Emma, a beautiful brunette with an infectious smile. They had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, their young faces beaming in every photo. Family trips, birthday celebrations, Christmas mornings, every post radiated domestic bliss. Ethan's jaw clenched. Claire wasn't just betraying him. She was aiding Logan in betraying his family. His chest tightened as he thought about Emma, so unaware of the destruction lurking behind Logan's perfect facade. For the first time since discovering the affair, Ethan felt a flicker of clarity. He wasn't going to confront Claire, at least not yet. Instead, he would use their lies against them. If Logan and Claire thought they could get away with their deceit, they were gravely mistaken. Ethan spent the next few days piecing together a plan. His first move was subtle: reach out to Emma. He crafted his message carefully, keeping his tone friendly and nonchalant. "Hi, Emma. I'm Ethan, Claire's husband. We're hosting a neighborhood barbecue next weekend, and thought it would be nice to invite some new faces. It'd be great if you, Logan, and the kids could join us. Let me know if you're interested." It didn't take long for Emma to respond. Her message was warm and enthusiastic. "That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for the invite. We'd love to come." Ethan leaned back in his chair, his heart pounding. The pieces were falling into place. The barbecue would be the stage where their lies would be exposed, not just to him, but to everyone. The week leading up to the barbecue was a test of Ethan's resolve. Claire remained oblivious, throwing herself into the preparations with an enthusiasm that made Ethan's stomach churn. She spent hours fussing over decorations, discussing menu options, and picking out the perfect outfit. "Are we inviting anyone from my office?" she asked one evening, glancing over the guest list. Ethan paused, forcing a smile. A few people thought it might be nice to mix things up. Get to know some new faces. She nodded, though her expression flickered with something akin to unease. Did she suspect? Ethan couldn't tell, but he wasn't about to let his guard down. On the day of the barbecue, the backyard gleamed with precision. Twinkling string lights hung overhead, casting a festive glow over the neatly arranged tables. The smell of grilled food wafted through the crisp autumn air as guests began to arrive. Ethan played the role of the perfect host, greeting each person warmly and moving seamlessly between conversations. When Emma and Logan arrived with their children in tow, Ethan's smile didn't falter, though his pulse quickened. "So glad you could make it," he said, shaking Logan's hand with deliberate firmness. Logan's eyes darted nervously to Claire, who was stationed near the grill. Her smile faltered when their gazes met, her face paling slightly before she forced a laugh. Emma, blissfully unaware, was all charm. "This is such a beautiful setup. Thank you for inviting us." "The pleasure's all mine," Ethan replied, his tone smooth. As the evening progressed, Ethan watched the tension between Claire and Logan build. They avoided direct eye contact, their interactions stilted and awkward. Meanwhile, Ethan made a point of engaging Emma in light-hearted conversation. She laughed easily, her warmth cutting through the chilly evening air. At one point, Ethan caught Claire and Logan huddled near the drink table, their heads bent close together. Their body language screamed desperation. Ethan approached them, his voice cutting through their hushed conversation. "Everything all right here?" Claire jumped, her grip tightening around her wine glass. "Just fine," she said quickly. "We were discussing work." "Work," Ethan repeated, his tone loaded with meaning. "Claire's been so busy with late nights at work recently. She's mentioned how demanding it's been." Logan's face paled, and Claire's eyes dropped to the floor. Before either of them could respond, Emma appeared, slipping her arm through Logan's with a cheerful smile. "What's the topic?" she asked brightly. "Work," Ethan said smoothly. "I was just telling Logan how impressive it is to balance a demanding career and a family. It can't be easy." Emma beamed, oblivious to the tension radiating from her husband and Claire. "He's always been great at that," she said proudly. Ethan smiled, but inside his resolve hardened. They deserved what was coming. As night fell and the soft glow of string lights bathed the yard, Ethan stood at the head of the table, raising his glass. The buzz of conversation ebbed, and all eyes turned to him. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady but commanding. "These moments remind us of the importance of community, trust, and honesty in our relationships." Claire's smile froze. Logan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "And sometimes," Ethan continued, his tone sharpening, "we uncover truths that challenge that trust, truths that force us to reconsider the people we thought we knew." He turned to Claire, his gaze piercing. "Claire, would you like to explain your late-night meetings with Logan, or should I?" The backyard fell deathly silent. Moments earlier, it had been filled with laughter and chatter. Now, every pair of eyes was fixed on Claire and Logan. The twinkling string lights overhead seemed to mock the suffocating tension that blanketed the gathering. Claire's face turned ashen, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came out. Logan's hand, gripping his drink, trembled slightly, his knuckles white. Beside him, Emma's brow furrowed, her confusion mounting with every second. "Ethan," Claire stammered, her voice barely audible. I don't know what you mean." Ethan's smile was cold and sharp, a blade designed to cut. "Don't insult everyone here by lying," he said, his tone dripping with icy disdain. He turned to Emma, his expression softening just slightly. "Emma, I hate to do this to you in front of everyone, but you deserve the truth." Emma blinked, glancing between Ethan and Logan, her confusion giving way to dread. "The truth about what?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan didn't hesitate. He pulled his phone from his pocket and opened the gallery. A few swipes brought up the damning evidence, the texts, the photos, the undeniable proof of the affair. He turned the screen toward Emma, holding it steady as she leaned in to see. Her reaction was immediate. Her face drained of color as her hand flew to her mouth. "Logan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Tell me this isn't true." Logan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The weight of the evidence rendered him mute. His silence was an admission louder than any words could be. The crowd erupted into murmurs and gasps. Neighbors exchanged shocked glances, their curiosity tinged with discomfort. Claire stood frozen, her eyes darting between Ethan and Logan, searching for an escape that didn't exist. Emma's shock quickly turned to fury. She turned to Logan, her voice shaking but loud enough for everyone to hear. "How could you? After everything we've built, our family, our life, you threw it all away for this?" Her hand swept toward Claire, who flinched as if struck. It wasn't like that," Logan muttered, his voice weak and unconvincing. It just happened. Emma's laugh was sharp and bitter. "That's all you have to say? After months of sneaking around, of lying to my face, that's your excuse?" Logan tried to reach for her, but Emma recoiled. "Don't touch me," she snapped, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "You disgust me." Meanwhile, Claire turned to Ethan, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, please," she begged. "Let's talk about this somewhere private. Please, we can work this out." Ethan's expression was unreadable, his voice calm but resolute. "Private? Did you care about privacy when you were sneaking around with Logan? When you lied to my face every day for months?" "Ethan, I made a mistake," Claire sobbed. "It didn't mean anything. I love you. You love me." Ethan's laugh was cold and hollow. "You destroyed our marriage for someone who couldn't even stay loyal to his own wife. That's not love, Claire. That's selfishness." Emma, her composure barely holding, turned to Ethan. "Thank you for telling me," she said, her voice raw with emotion. "I deserve to know." She grabbed her purse and gestured for her children, who had been playing near the patio, blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding. "We're leaving." Logan tried to follow, his face a mask of panic. "Emma, wait, please." She spun around, her eyes blazing. "Wait for what? For you to tell me more lies? You're not coming home, Logan. Not tonight. Not ever." The slam of the gate, as she left, reverberated through the backyard like a final verdict. Logan lingered awkwardly for a moment, glancing around at the crowd, but no one met his gaze. With a muttered apology, he slipped out after her. The neighbors, sensing the night was over, began to disperse. Some approached Ethan, clapping him on the shoulder or offering words of support. Others cast Claire pitying or judgmental glances as they left. Within minutes, the once lively party was empty, leaving only Ethan and Claire in the dim glow of the string lights. Claire stood trembling, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "Ethan, please," she whispered, her voice broken. "We can fix this. I'll do anything." Ethan shook his head, his expression hard. "There's nothing left to fix, Claire. You shattered everything we built together the moment you decided I wasn't enough for you." "Don't say that," Claire sobbed, reaching for him. "I made a mistake. One mistake. We've been through so much together. Please don't throw it all away." Ethan stepped back, his voice cold and final. "I'm not the one who threw it away, Claire. You did. And now you'll have to live with the consequences." Without another word, he turned and walked into the house, leaving her standing alone in the empty yard. The soft glow of the lights illuminated her tear-streaked face as she crumbled to her knees, sobbing into the night. The fallout was swift and brutal. News of the confrontation spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. Claire became a pariah, her once friendly neighbors avoiding her at every turn. At work, whispers of her scandalous affair followed her, and she eventually requested a transfer to another department, hoping for a fresh start. But the shame followed her wherever she went. Ethan, meanwhile, channeled his pain into rebuilding his life. He filed for divorce the next day, systematically erasing all traces of Claire from their home. He threw himself into work and rediscovered hobbies he had long neglected. Slowly but surely, he began to find himself again. Emma, too, wasted no time filing for divorce. She focused on her children, determined to shield them from the fallout of Logan's betrayal. In quiet moments, though, the weight of her heartbreak threatened to crush her, but she refused to let it define her. Weeks passed, but the weight of the barbecue lingered in the air like a storm that had left destruction in its wake. Ethan walked through his house, now void of Claire's presence. Her belongings were gone, packed hastily after he'd filed for divorce, and the silence was deafening. At first, it felt like an open wound, but slowly, Ethan began to find solace in the emptiness. It was a space free of lies and betrayal. His nights, once filled with restless thoughts and pain, grew calmer. He found peace in the small things, a good book, a quiet evening, the steady hum of his workshop where he had thrown himself into woodworking. One evening, as he smoothed the edges of a coffee table, Ethan's phone buzzed. Wiping his hands on a rag, he glanced at the screen. It was a message from Emma. "Hi, Ethan. I hope you're doing okay. I just wanted to say thank you again for telling me the truth. I know it couldn't have been easy. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." Ethan stared at the screen, a faint smile tugging at his lips. She didn't owe him anything, yet her kindness felt like a small light breaking through the fog of his life. "Thank you, Emma," he typed back. "Some days are better than others, but I'm getting there. I hope you and the kids are doing okay." Her reply came quickly. We're managing. It's been tough, but I'm focusing on the kids. If you ever feel like grabbing coffee, let me know. For a moment, Ethan hesitated. The idea of meeting Emma, of facing someone who shared his pain, felt daunting, but also comforting. I'd like that, he replied. A week later, Ethan found himself sitting across from Emma in a quiet cafe. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the heavy conversation they both knew was inevitable. Emma looked tired but composed, her eyes carrying a quiet strength that Ethan admired. I wasn't sure if you'd actually come, she said, offering a small smile. I wasn't sure either, Ethan admitted. But I think we both needed this. They spoke cautiously at first, their words measured. But as the minutes ticked by, the tension between them began to ease. Emma told Ethan about her children, how she was trying to keep their lives as normal as possible despite the upheaval. Ethan shared his newfound love for woodworking, how it gave him purpose during the darkest days. It's strange, isn't it? Emma said, stirring her coffee. How two people who've never met can end up so deeply connected because of something so awful. Ethan nodded. It's not the kind of connection anyone asks for, but I guess it's the one we have. For the first time in months, Ethan felt a genuine sense of relief. Talking to Emma was like speaking to someone who truly understood the depth of his pain. She didn't offer empty platitudes or pity, just honesty and understanding. As they parted ways, Emma gave him a brief but sincere hug. Thank you, Ethan. I didn't realize how much I needed this. Ethan watched her walk away, a faint warmth blooming in his chest. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something real, something he hadn't felt in a long time. While Ethan and Emma began to rebuild their lives, Claire's world continued to unravel. The neighborhood whispers hadn't died down. If anything, they had grown louder. Once a social butterfly, Claire found herself avoided by former friends and acquaintances. Invitations to gatherings stopped. Conversations turned awkward when she entered a room. At work, things weren't much better. Her transfer to a new department had been approved, but the whispers followed her. Colleagues who once respected her now regarded her with thinly veiled judgment. Desperate for support, Claire reached out to Logan, but his response was cold and curt. This was a mistake, Claire, he said when they met in a dingy parking lot after work. We both need to move on. Move on? Claire's voice cracked. You said you cared about me. Logan sighed, running a hand through his hair. I have to focus on my family. Or what's left of it. You're such a coward. Claire spat, tears streaming down her face. You're leaving me to deal with this alone. But Logan had already turned away, leaving Claire standing in the dim light, her heart heavy with the weight of her choices. Months later, the sting of betrayal had dulled for Ethan. He had thrown himself into work and his hobbies, his home now a sanctuary of peace and purpose. One day, as he worked on a new dining table in his garage, his phone buzzed with a message from Emma. Want to go for a hike this weekend? The kids are with their grandparents, and I could use some fresh air. Ethan smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. I'd love to. The following Saturday, they met at a scenic trail just outside the city. The crisp spring air was invigorating, and as they walked, their conversation flowed easily. They spoke of healing, of moving forward, and of the tentative hope they both felt for the future. As they reached a clearing overlooking a serene lake, Emma turned to Ethan, her expression thoughtful. Do you ever think about what comes next? She asked softly. Ethan nodded, his gaze fixed on the water. All the time, I think about how much was lost, but also how much is still ahead. For the first time in a long time, I feel free. Emma smiled, her eyes shining. Me too. They stood there in comfortable silence, the warmth of the sun on their faces. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to hope, not just for himself, but for something new, something better.